There are some losses so beautiful that the world never truly lets them fade. Long before his name became legend, before poets whispered his story beside dying fires, there lived a man whose music could soften even the hardest corners of the human soul. His name was Orpheus. When he played, rivers slowed to listen. Trees bent gently toward the sound of his lyre. Even the wind itself seemed to grow still beneath his songs. And for a time, he was happy, because there was once a woman who laughed beneath golden sunlight while he played beside her. A woman whose smile made the world feel softer somehow. Her name was Eurydice, and though kingdoms would one day remember Orpheus as the man who walked willingly into darkness, that is not where this story truly begins. It begins in the warmth of summer, in music drifting through the trees, in two people hopelessly in love beneath a sky that had not yet learned cruelty, because the gods have always envied mortal happiness, and every beautiful thing eventually asks the same terrible question: how far would you go to bring back the person you lost?
People think my story is about love. It is not. Love was only the doorway. My story is about doubt. One breath of it, one flicker, one moment so small the gods could hide it between two heartbeats. That is all it took to destroy me. You have heard my name, I imagine. Even now, after all these years, men still sing it like it belongs to someone noble. Orpheus. The boy with the golden voice, the man whose music softened stone, the husband who walked into death and almost came back with his bride. Almost. That is the word they never let me escape. I have lived inside it longer than I lived inside joy. Almost. When I was young, I thought my gift was a blessing. I could pluck a string and make fishermen stop rowing. I could sing beside a river and the water would slow, as if the world itself wished to listen. Birds came down from the trees. Wolves lay beside lambs. Old men wept for memories they had buried before I was born. People called it divine. They were right, but gifts from the gods are never free. They are hooks with honey on them. Mine was music. Hers was silence. Eurydice. Even now I try to say her name carefully, as if it is a cup filled to the brim. One wrong movement and I spill her again. She was not the woman the poets made of her, not some pale shadow drifting through my story just to give me something to lose. She laughed too loudly. She walked barefoot when she could. She argued with the wind as if it might answer. She hated the songs people asked me to sing at feasts because they were always about kings, wars, gods, and men who believed grief made them interesting. Sing something smaller, she told me once. Smaller. A loaf cooling on a table, a dog sleeping in the sun, a woman hearing her husband return before she sees him. I laughed at her. I was young enough then to think the great things were always the loudest. So I wrote her a song about morning, not dawn, not Helios, not rosy-fingered anything. Morning. The ordinary mercy of waking and finding the person you love still breathing beside you. That was her favorite. She said it was the only song of mine that did not sound like it was trying to impress the gods. Perhaps that was why it was the truest. We married in spring. I remember the day not because it was perfect, but because it was not. Rain threatened the hills. The wine was too sharp. Someone's goat escaped and ate part of the garland from the altar. Eurydice's mother cried before the vows began and did not stop until long after they were finished. And Eurydice, my Eurydice, stepped on my foot during the dance and whispered, "There, now you will remember I was real." I did. I do. The poets never know what to do with happiness. They rush past it as if joy is only the road towards sorrow. But let me stay there a moment. Let me have one more breath inside that life. There was a little house, a fig tree outside, a crack in the wall near the bed where sunlight entered in a thin golden line. She would wake before me and trace it with her finger, as if measuring the day before, deciding whether to trust it. I sang less after we married. People found that strange. They thought love would make me pour music into the world, but love made me quiet. For the first time in my life, I did not need to fill every silence. Then came the snake. No thunder, no omen, no black-winged dream, just grass. That is the cruelty of it. The world does not always announce the moment it becomes unbearable. She had gone with the nymphs into the meadow. There are stories about a man chasing her. Some say Aristeus, some say another, some say she ran, some say she danced, some say she never saw the serpent until its teeth were already in her heel. I was not there. Remember that. Whatever else you believe about me, remember that I was not there. That is the first punishment, not death, absence. To be elsewhere when love calls out. They brought her to me near evening. Her hair was full of crushed flowers. There was dirt beneath her nails. Her lips had already begun to darken. I remember thinking that someone should clean her hands before her mother saw them. A foolish thought, a human thought. I called her name, once, then again. Then in every way a name can be called, as question, as command, as prayer, as bargain. Nothing. So I sang. Of course I sang. What else does a man do when the only weapon he has ever trusted is suddenly useless? I sang the morning song, her song, the one about waking and finding breath beside you. But she did not wake. The villagers stood back, some wept, some watched with that terrible hunger people have around grief, grateful it has chosen another house. I sang until my throat tore, and still, she did not wake. By midnight I understood something I had never understood before. Music could move the world, but it could not move death. So I went to find death. Not in bravery. Do not let anyone tell you I was brave. I went because staying alive in a world without her felt like obedience, and I had no wish to obey. The entrance to the underworld is not marked for men like us. There is no grand gate with torches and carved warnings. It is a wound in the earth, a place where the air forgets how to warm itself. A mouth that does not open until it knows you are desperate enough to enter. I carried my lyre, not a sword, not gold, not offerings, only the thing the gods had given me. The path down was long, longer than distance. The living world faded by degrees, first birdsong, then wind, then the small noises of my own body seemed to abandon me. My footsteps made no sound, my breath came back to me cold. At the river, Charon waited. You imagine him as monstrous. He was worse. He was bored. An old ferryman with hollow eyes, watching grief arrive in endless procession. Kings, beggars, children, murderers, brides, fools, all equal at last, all clutching coins or prayers, all learning too late that importance is a garment death does not recognize. He looked at me and held out one hand. I have no coin, I said. I know. I have come for my wife. I know. Will you take me? No. So I sang, not loudly. The dead do not need volume. I sang of rivers that remember sunlight, of boats that once were trees, of old hands tired from carrying sorrow. Charon listened. His face did not change, but one tear slid down the hollow of his cheek and vanished before it reached his jaw. He hated me for that. But he let me aboard. A Across the Styx, the dead turned toward me. That was the first true terror. Not their faces. Many had no faces left in any way that mattered. It was their attention. The dead do not look as the living look. The living glance, judge, desire, compare. The dead only recognize, and they recognized longing. At the gates, Cerberus rose, 3 heads, 6 eyes, a throat full of thunder. His breath smelled of old blood and iron. I should have run. Instead, I thought of the little dog Eurydice once fed behind our house, the ugly one with one torn ear. She named him Lord of the Road because he slept wherever carts needed to pass. So I sang that dog's song. Cerberus lowered one head, then the second, then the third. By the time I passed, the guardian of hell was asleep like a pup in summer shade. Do you understand now why I believed I could win? Every impossible thing opened before me. The river, the gate, the beast. The underworld itself heard my grief and made room. Even the damned paused in their punishments. Tantalus forgot his hunger. Ixion's wheel slowed. Sisyphus leaned against his stone and wept like a child. For one moment, suffering listened to suffering. Then I stood before Hades and Persephone. You must not believe every story told in the upper world. Hades was not a cackling butcher on a throne of bones. He was colder than that, more ancient, a god who had seen every empire before its first stone was laid. His eyes were not cruel. Cruelty belongs to those who still expect pleasure from pain. Hades was lawful. That was worse. Beside him sat Persephone, half shadow, half spring. There were pomegranate seeds on her lips. She looked at me as if she had been waiting. I knelt. For the first time in my life, I had no song ready. My lord, I said, my lady. My voice broke on lady. Persephone's face changed. A little. That little was enough. I sang then. Not to impress, not to conquer, not even to persuade. I sang our life. The crack of light on the wall, the rain at our wedding, the goat eating the altar flowers, her foot on mine during the dance, her voice telling me to sing smaller things. I sang the morning song, but now the morning had no answer. When I finished, no one moved. There is no silence like the silence of the dead. Then Persephone whispered, husband. Hades did not look at her. No, husband. She is mine now. They are all yours now. That is the law. She came too soon. They all say that. She was loved. At that, Hades turned. All are loved by someone. Persephone looked at me, and I saw in her face the old wound of being taken, the wound of a girl who had vanished from sunlight and learned to sit beside the dark. Let this one return, she said. Hades was still for so long that hope became painful. At last he spoke. One condition. There it was. There is always one. She will follow you. You will walk ahead until both of you have reached the upper world. You will not look back. I bowed my head. Do you understand? Hades asked. Yes. No, he said. You do not. I should have listened. Gods warn us sometimes, not out of kindness, but because it makes the punishment cleaner. You will hear nothing, Hades said. No step, no breath, no voice. She will be behind you, but you will have no proof. Walk anyway. I said yes too quickly. Men in stories always do. The path upward began. At first, I was strong. Remember that too. I was strong at first. I walked through the halls of the dead with my eyes fixed ahead. I did not turn when shades whispered from the dark. I did not turn when I heard my mother's voice, though she had been dead many years. I did not turn when something that sounded like Eurydice sobbed my name. Tricks, I told myself. All tricks. The dead are full of borrowed voices. I walked. The lyre hung silent against my back. I had never known silence could weigh so much. After a while, minutes, hours, years, I cannot say, a thought entered me. Small, almost gentle. What if she is not there? I crushed it. Then it came again. What if this is the joke? I walked faster. Hades is lord of the dead. What does the dead lord owe the living? I tried to remember Persephone's eyes. I tried to trust pity in a queen of ghosts. But hope is not trust. Hope is hunger wearing a holy mask. The path narrowed, the air warmed. Somewhere ahead, faint and impossible, I smelled rain on living soil. I nearly laughed. That was when doubt sharpened. Because joy is when fear becomes most inventive. What if I reached the sunlight and found only myself? What if I had sung to kings and monsters and gods, and all of them had watched me perform grief for their amusement? What if love had made me ridiculous? Still I walked. Then I heard something. Not a voice, not a step. A silence behind me that felt occupied. That was worse. Had she always been that quiet? Had death changed the way she moved? Was she reaching for me? Was she frightened? Was she wondering why I did not speak? I wanted to say her name. I was afraid the rule forbade that too. So I said nothing, and silence answered. The mouth of the cave appeared ahead. A thin blade of daylight cut the dark. I could see dust turning gold in the air. One more stretch. 10 steps perhaps. No more. I have counted them every night since. 10, 9, 8. My foot touched stone warmed by the sun. 7, 6. Behind me, nothing. 5. I thought of her hands dirty from the meadow. 4. I thought, what if she is reaching for me now? 3. I thought, what if she thinks I have abandoned her? 2. I thought, I only need to see. 1. I turned. There are moments memory refuses to age. I see her still. Eurydice, pale in the threshold between worlds. Not as they carried her to me, not dead in that final way. She was there, truly there, her eyes wide, not accusing. That is another lie they tell. They say she blamed me. She did not. That would have been easier. Her face held only sadness and love, and the terrible knowledge that love had not been enough. I reached for her. She reached for me. Our fingers almost touched. Almost. Then the dark took her back. Not violently. No screaming, no claws, no dramatic cruelty. She simply receded, as if the world had breathed in. Her last word was my name. Not shouted, not cursed, just spoken with the tired tenderness of someone watching a beloved fool break both their hearts. Orpheus. Then she was gone. I ran back, of course. I clawed at the stone until my nails split. I screamed for Hades. I begged Persephone. I sang until blood filled my mouth. No gate opened. No ferryman came. No beast slept. The underworld allows one miracle per grief, no more. After that, people say I wandered. That part is true. I wandered because places had become unbearable. Our house was too full of her absence. The fig tree kept growing, obscenely alive. The crack of sunlight still crossed the bed every morning, measuring days she would never enter. People asked me to sing. At first I refused. Then I sang only to stones. Stones are honest. They do not ask you to heal for their comfort. Years passed, or maybe they only gathered. The young began to tell my story while I was still alive, which is a strange punishment. To hear your wound made useful, to hear strangers admire your devotion when the truth is that devotion failed at the final step. They called me faithful. I was not faithful. I turned. They called it love. It was not love. It was fear. I have thought about that moment longer than any philosopher has thought about virtue. Was it weakness? Yes. Was it human? Yes. Does that forgive it? No. That is the part no one wants in the song. They want grief to ennoble. They want love to redeem. They want the descent, the bargain, the almost, the beautiful tragedy. But tragedy is not beautiful when you are inside it. It is just a room where the same moment happens forever. I am old now, older than I ever imagined becoming. That feels like another insult. My hands shake too much to play as I once did. My voice is cracked. Some mornings I wake and cannot remember the faces of men I knew for years, but I remember hers perfectly. That is mercy and torture together. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had not turned. Would we have returned to the little house? Would she have laughed again? Would we have grown old badly and honestly, arguing over bread and whether my songs had become too gloomy? Or would death have followed her back? Would she have sat beside me at supper with the underworld still in her eyes? Would I have lost her slowly instead? These are cowards' questions. I ask them anyway. Because the truth beneath all of this, the truth no poet sings, is that I did not turn because I stopped believing in her. I turned because I stopped believing I was allowed to have her. That is what grief does. It makes happiness feel like a trick. And the gods, oh, the gods know this. They did not need to drag her from me. They only needed to place one condition between my love and my fear. I did the rest. So when they tell you the story and they come to the part where I look back, do not imagine a fool who forgot the rules. Imagine a man who had already lost everything suddenly asked to trust the universe. Imagine the silence behind him. Imagine the light ahead. Imagine being one step from joy and discovering you no longer know how to believe in it. That was my failure. Not that I loved too little, that I feared too much. The lyre is beside me now. Old wood, old strings, like me. People still ask for the song of the underworld. They want to hear how I charmed death. They want to hear the note that made Persephone weep. But I cannot sing that song anymore. The song I cannot escape is smaller. A loaf cooling on a table. A dog sleeping in the sun. A woman hearing her husband return before she sees him. Mourning. Always mourning. The ordinary mercy I could not keep. If the dead speak true, Eurydice heard me turn. That is the thought that has sat beside my bed all these years. Not that I lost her, that in the final moment she knew. She knew I doubted. She knew I was afraid. She knew I loved her, and then she had to leave anyway. So no, my story is not about love. Love brought me to the gates. Love softened the ferryman. Love quieted the beast. Love moved the queen of the dead. But doubt turned my head. And that is why I am still here after all this time, singing to a world that mistakes sorrow for wisdom. Listen carefully then. Not to the part where I descend. Not to the part where the dead weep. Not to the part where the gods relent. Listen to the silence behind me. That is where the story lives. That is where she was. That is where I lost her. Almost.
And so Orpheus lost her, not to war, not to age, not even to death itself, but to one final moment of fear, one final glance born from love, doubt, and the unbearable hope that she was still there behind him. Some say the gods punished Orpheus because he failed their test, but perhaps the cruelest thing the gods ever asked was for a grieving man not to look back. And perhaps that is why his story still survives after thousands of years, because somewhere within all of us lives the same impossible longing, the wish for one more moment with the people we loved, one more voice, one more touch, one more chance to turn around and find them waiting there. But some doors close forever, some songs end in silence, and some souls continue wandering long after the music fades. This has been the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. If you enjoyed this journey into the darker and more beautiful corners of mythology, subscribe to Mythic Side Stories for more cinematic retellings of the legends history refused to forget. Until next time, keep the fires burning.